Aerys Targaryen, second of his name, better known as the Mad King. Aerys is a universally disliked character, probably the most mentioned Targaryen we never actually get to see, save a 3-second flashback, and the reason for the war known as Robert's Rebellion and the downfall of House Targaryen. What few people know, however, is that Aerys was quite a promising king in his younger years. The catalyst for Aerys' full descent into madness was a rebellion called the Defiance of Duskendale. But Aerys had been gradually losing his sanity for many years before this event. In this video, we'll take a closer look at how a once promising prince turned out to be the worst king the Seven Kingdoms ever had. Aerys was the son of King Jaehaerys II and his sister wife Queen Chillyravenart. Aerys wedded his sister Rhaella at a young age. The two were not fond of each other, but their father had them married because of the prophecy of a wood witch, that the prince that was promised would be born of their line. During his youth, Aerys befriended Tywin Lannister, the heir to Casterly Rock, who served at King's Landing as a page, and Stephen Baratheon, the heir to Storm's End. In 259 AC, when Aerys was just 15 years old and Rhaella was even younger, their first son Rhaegar was born to them. Rhaegar was born during the tragedy of Summerhall, which cost the lives of King Aegon V and his eldest son Duncan. Aerys' father Jaehaerys ascended the throne as King Jaehaerys Targaryen, second of his name. There are rumors that the very night of the coronation, Aerys took the maidenhead of Joanna Lannister, later wife to his friend Tywin. In 260 AC, when Aerys was 16 years old, he served as a squire in the War of the Ninepenny Kings, fought in the Stepstones, also called the Fifth Blackfyre Rebellion. There, Aerys was knighted by his good friend Tywin. When his father passed away 2 years later, Aerys ascended the throne at age 18 as King Aerys Targaryen, second of his name. Aerys' coronation was greeted with much enthusiasm by lords and small folk alike. Aerys was a handsome young man, with the classic Valyrian look of purple eyes and gold-silver hair. Aerys was generous and ambitious, active and lively. At the same time, Aerys was not the most intelligent or diligent person, and was quick to anger. He could be vain, proud, and his mood was changeable. But the young prince had an undeniable charm. Aerys' reign began with great promise. He started by replacing many of the officials at court, most of them being old men brought in by his father and grandfather, with young and promising lords. He appointed his friend Tywin as hand of the king, being impressed by the way he dealt with the uprisings of houses Tarbeck and Rhoyne. Aerys declared that he wished to be the greatest king the Seven Kingdoms had ever had. He took an active part in his rule during his early years, and boasted of many grand plans, all of which never came to fruition. In truth, the realm prospered because it was administered by the brilliant Tywin. In time, Tywin's reputation for ruling the Seven Kingdoms became so well known that people started to whisper that it was Tywin who truly ruled the Seven Kingdoms, not Aerys. This planted a seed of jealousy in Aerys' mind, who started to regret having Tywin as his hand. Aerys' relationship with Tywin started to deteriorate. Aerys started making inappropriate remarks about Tywin's wife Joanna, playing on the fact that she had once been Aerys' lover, and he wouldn't mind having her again. Regarding the daily rule of the Seven Kingdoms, Aerys stopped listening to his most important advisor and often did the opposite of what Tywin suggested, to the detriment of the Seven Kingdoms itself. Courtiers soon noted that the best way to get on the king's good side was to ridicule the hand. Tywin suffered these insults in silence, and diligently continued in his role as hand, while Aerys' jealousy grew with each passing year. When Tywin's captain of the guard, Sir Ilyn Payne, was heard repeating the statement that the true ruler of the Seven Kingdoms was Tywin, King Aerys had his tongue removed with hot pincers. Aerys' growing jealousy of Tywin was not the only cause for his shift in character during these years. His relationship with his queen, Rhaella, was far from happy. Aerys took many mistresses during his marriage, of which Joanna Lannister was rumored to be one, and this strained his relationship with his queen. Adding to that, he and Queen Rhaella were plagued with many difficulties with childbirth during their life, something that made him increasingly paranoid. Their first son Rhaegar grew to adulthood, but after that Rhaella miscarried twice and had a stillborn daughter, Their child Darwin survived for only half a year, and he was followed with another miscarriage and a stillborn child. Their child Aegon was born premature and died within the year. Aerys grew increasingly suspicious during all this, and in the end decided that Rhaella had been unfaithful to him, and that none of the stillbirths, miscarriages and dead children had been his. Rhaella was forbidden to leave Maegor's holdfast from then on, and 2 septa shared her bed on orders of the king, to ensure she remained faithful. In 274 AC, it seemed as though Aerys' madness started to fade, when a son called Jaehaerys was born to him and Rhaella. His new son filled Aerys with joy, and the king suddenly acted as he had done in his younger years. Jaehaerys' death that same year, however, filled him with rage. Aerys had the wet nurse beheaded, and afterwards was convinced that the royal mistress had poisoned his child. He had her entire family tortured and executed. After Jaehaerys' death, Aerys fasted for a fortnight, made a walk of repentance to the Great Sept of Baelor, and prayed with the High Septon. When he came back, he announced he would stay true to his vows to Queen Rhaella from then on, and renounced all other women. In 276 AC, Prince Viserys was born to Aerys and Rhaella. His birth did not return the same joy to Aerys as Jaehaerys' birth had. Better yet, Aerys grew increasingly paranoid over the boy's safety. Viserys was surrounded by guards at all times, and not even Queen Rhaella was allowed to be alone with him. With his paranoia over his children and wife growing, and his relationship with his former friend and hand Tywin severely strained, the moment of his true descent into madness had arrived. Seeing that you're still here, if you liked the video, please leave a like for the algorithm and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get to 1000 subscribers, and your help in achieving that goal is very much appreciated. Lord Dennis was the Lord of House Darklin of Duskendale. Duskendale is a big port town in the Crownlands. Once it had been the primary port of the region, but the growing city of King's Landing took over much of the trade that had once been Duskendale's. To remedy this problem, Lord Dennis wanted to win a charter for Duskendale, which would grant him more autonomy from the crown. His proposal was refused by Tywin. Knowing about the strained relationship between the king and the hand, Dennis did not give up that easily. He withheld payments to the crown and invited Aerys to Duskendale to hear his petition for the charter. Aerys intended to decline at first, but after his hand Tywin advised the king to refuse the invitation, he changed his mind. Aerys now saw this invitation as a chance to handle the situation on his own, and show that he ruled the Seven Kingdoms, not Tywin. Aerys travelled to Duskendale with a small force and Sir Gawain Gaunt of the Kingsguard, eager to prove himself. The invitation proved to be a trap, however. Sir Gawain and the king's escort were killed upon arrival, and Aerys himself was taken prisoner. Aerys was shoved, stripped of his royal garments and struck by his captors. Tywin rode to Duskendale with an army immediately, besieging it. He could not outright attack it, however, as Lord Dennis threatened to kill Aerys at the first sign of an assault on the town. This situation lasted for half a year. Lord Dennis was convinced that Tywin would eventually offer him the terms he wanted, out of fear for the king's life. Tywin just gave Dennis a final demand: release the king, or Tywin and his army would storm the town and kill everyone inside. The stalemate was eventually ended by Sir Barristan Selmy of the Kingsguard. He offered to go in alone on a rescue mission. Tywin gave Barristan 1 day before he would storm the castle. Dressed as a hooded beggar, he scaled the walls of the town and later the castle at night. He freed King Aerys, avenged his sworn brother Sir Gawain by slaying his killer, and managed to get out of the castle with the king. The Defiance of Duskendale was over, and Aerys' wrath was terrible. He didn't just execute Lord Dennis, but he ordered the deaths of every member of House Darklin. After that had been done, he ordered the death of every member of House Hollard, a house close in kin to House Darklin, who helped them during the Defiance. Only Dantes Hollard, a young boy, was spared when Sir Barristan Selmy requested it. Lord Dennis's wife, Lady Sarella, who was held accountable for Dennis's uprising, had her tongue and womanly parts torn out and was afterwards burnt alive. After the Defiance of Duskendale, Aerys was a changed man. Some people believe the Defiance was what caused Aerys' madness, but as we have seen, His madness was already growing. It is more likely that his 6 months of captivity shattered what little sanity the king had left. After this life-changing event, Aerys no longer allowed people to touch him, and as a result his hair, beard and fingernails grew long and dirty. He no longer allowed any blades near him, except the swords of the King's Guard, and his judgment became harsher and more cruel. Aerys saw enemies everywhere he looked, real or imagined. For the next 4 years, until the tourney at Harrenhal, Aerys would not leave the Red Keep. His capture also further deteriorated his relationship with his hand, Tywin, and his son and heir Rhaegar. Aerys had grown convinced that Tywin and Rhaegar had conspired to have Aerys killed by storming Duskendale while he was still captive, so that Rhaegar could ascend the Iron Throne and marry Tywin's daughter Cersei. From here on out, Aerys trusted no one, save maybe his Kingsguard knights, and he never recovered from his captivity. His actions and erratic behavior would eventually lead to Robert's rebellion and the downfall of House Targaryen. In the books, we see Ser Barristan considering if he made the right choice that day. If the Seven Kingdoms could not have been saved from much grief and death, if Aerys had died at Duskendale and Rhaegar would have taken the throne in his stead. And that's the story of Aerys' descent into madness. What do you think Ser Barristan should have done? And do you think Aerys is the worst king the Seven Kingdoms ever had? Please let me know in the comments. Thank you all very much for watching. See you next time.